Can the prisoner's dilemma really predict suboptimal results? Acting in one's self-interest typically produces superior results. A post on LinkedIn made the following statement: "The prisoner's dilemma is game theory and illustrates why everyone acting in their own self-interest leads to suboptimization." For those of you not familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, William Poundstone describes it as follows. Two members of a criminal gang are arrested and imprisoned. Each prisoner is in solitary confinement with no means of speaking to or exchanging messages with the other. The police admit they don't have enough evidence to convict the pair on the principal charge. They plan to sentence both to a year in prison on a lesser charge. Simultaneously, the police offer each prisoner a Faustian bargain. If he testifies against his partner, he will go free while the partner will get 3 years in prison on the main charge. Oh yes, there's a catch. If both prisoners testify against each other, both will be sentenced to 2 years in jail. The prisoners are given a little time to think this over, but in no case may either learn what the other has decided until he has irrevocably made his decision. Each is informed that the other prisoner is being offered the very same deal. Each prisoner is concerned only with his own welfare, with minimizing his own prison sentence. Wikipedia says the following: "The prisoner's dilemma models many real-world situations involving strategic behavior. In casual usage, the label prisoner's dilemma may be applied to any situation in which two entities could gain important benefits from cooperating or suffer from failing to do so, but find it difficult or expensive to coordinate their activities." The point the poster on LinkedIn was making is that if the two prisoners cooperated with each other, in other words, neither testified against the other, they would each get 1 year in prison. However, if they both did what they thought was in each prisoner's best interest and testified, they would both get 2 years in prison. So therefore, doing what is in each person's best interest or self-interest leads to suboptimal results as opposed to cooperating. However, does the prisoner's dilemma really prove that acting in one's self-interest leads to suboptimal results? I do not think so. To start off with, the prisoner's dilemma is unrealistic. The police do not sentence anyone to prison. Judges and juries sentence people to prison. Further, in most countries today, defense attorneys represent prisoners. Any decision would be made with input and recommendation from those attorneys. In the model, the two prisoners are members of a criminal gang. Their behavior may well be influenced by gang members' social constructs, such as not ratting on a fellow gang member. The model assumes that each person's judgment of what is in their best self-interest is the same, getting the minimum prison sentence. However, given the scenario, and based on relationships with gang leaders, it might be in their best interest not to testify at all. There are several reasons why pursuing self-interest would not align with testifying. In addition to the gang code of silence, someone might not testify for fear of reprisal against family members or a general distrust of the police. Unfortunately, theoretical models, such as the prisoner's dilemma, are not very good at modeling behavior in real life, because real life is much more complicated. Therefore, to use this model as the basis for making a statement that doing what is in one's self-interest will lead to suboptimal results is not valid. Let us examine the fallacy of the model's conclusion. First, you must look at what is in one's own self-interest. In this model, the first person's self-interest, testifying against the other person, is diametrically opposed to the second person's self-interest, testifying against the first person. In real life, self-interest is much more nuanced, and in many cases, self-interests are aligned, not opposites. An example is a business owner who wants to expand her business. It is in her self-interest to hire an employee to take on some of her work. If she does, she can sell more products or services and make more money. At the same time, it is in the employee's self-interest to take a job and earn money to put food on the table for his family. Each person following their own self-interest does not result in suboptimal results, but in fact, everyone is better off. In real-life situations, as opposed to the prisoner's dilemma, I suggest that most interactions between individuals or even groups of individuals are such that each person or group following his or her self-interest results in optimal results, as opposed to suboptimal results, because most self-interest situations are not diametrically opposed. Let's look at another example. I have lots of money. Someone else does not have lots of money. If I give money to a person who does not have lots of money, you might think that is not in my self-interest, but it is in my self-interest. The benefits of charitable giving are substantial, and in fact so substantial that most religions encourage people who follow that religion to engage in charity. If I give money to a poor person, that person may not steal from me. That is in my self-interest. If I give money to a poor person, that poor person may be able to pay for things he needs, as opposed to the government providing those things for free. If I give money to a poor person, I will feel good about doing something for my fellow man. Depending upon your beliefs, giving that money may even help you in the afterlife, if there's one. Back to prisoner's dilemma. It also does not consider a very human trait, self-sacrifice. People often sacrifice what is in their own good, for the good of others. A soldier jumps on a grenade to save his comrades. A medical practitioner exposes herself to disease to help her patients. A dad gives up going golfing to work with his daughter on her homework. A member of a religious order works with the poor. While these examples may be examples of self-sacrifice, they're also examples of self-interest. These people are doing what they do because they believe the actions align with their own self-interest. In other words, self-sacrifice is in one's self-interest, whether it be to raise kids you can be proud of, save people you love, help people in need, or heal the sick. It is in our self-interest to self-sacrifice because doing so results in a reward that is aligned with our self-interest. So let me finish where we started. The poster on LinkedIn stated that people following their own self-interest results in suboptimal results, and that this example of two people in prison applies to everyday activities and enterprises. The prisoner's dilemma is flawed because in most interactions, cooperation is in the self-interest of those who cooperate. In other words, I want to cooperate with others because in doing so I serve my own self-interest. The prisoner's dilemma may be good for getting some college students into a theoretical discussion, but as a guide for real-world decision-making, it is not very useful. As a final point, if we aren't acting in our own self-interest, in whose interest are we acting? The opposite of self-interest is acting in the interests of the group or the collective. However, if acting in the best interests of others is also not in one's own self-interest, then human nature is such that sooner or later people will stop acting in the best interests of the group and start acting in their own self-interest, which is a fundamental reason that political philosophies such as communism do not work.